We are going to finish up section 7-2, and the portion today is dealing with compound interest and exponential inequalities. So those are two separate things we're going to be looking at. Compound interest is this formula right here, so I'm going to kind of break that down for you. And you can calculate compound interest using the following formula. So we have A equals P times, and then you've got some quantity here raised to a power. So I want to point out to you that this is still an exponential equation, kind of in this format. It's just that we have these other values in here that have meaning for this problem. A is the amount that you would have in the account after T years. So T is my time in years. A is the amount that I would have, the amount of money in the account. P is the principal, so that's the amount that you invest. R is the annual interest rate, and you do have to change this. A lot of times R is given as a percent, but you need to change it to, R needs to be a decimal. So you have to change it to a decimal value. And N is the number of compounding periods each year. So some typical ones, if you compound monthly, then N equals 12. And what that means is at the end of the month, your bank would calculate how much interest you earned, and then they would put that into your account. So now you have more money, and then you would gain a little bit more interest the next month. You can have annual interest, kind of thought of as simple interest, and that would be N equals 1. So it would only be compounded one time during the year. Monthly, another, you could have weekly, not very common. N would be 52 because there's 52 weeks in a year. You might have daily. So in most cases, we would say 365 days in a year. So these are all some options, what's meant. That's what's meant by that. So the value of N is going to be the number of compounding periods each year. Another one is quarterly. And that would be 4. So every 3 months, so 4 times a year. So those are some, you might see some words like this in some of the problems that we look at. So here's an example. An investment account pays 5.4% annual interest. So right away I'm going to write down R equals 0.054 because you have to move the decimal point 2 places to the left when you change it to a decimal value. It's compounded quarterly. Good thing I thought of that one because that tells me then that N equals 4. $4,000 is placed in the account. That's the principal, is $4,000. And I want to find the balance after 8 years, so T is 8. And I want to find the balance, so I want to find the amount. So I take 4,000, 1 plus 0.054 over 4, raised to the 4 times 8 power, so the 32nd power. You can type it in just like it looks and hit enter, and then we get this amount. So the amount would be, and we will round to the nearest cent, $6,143.56. Now, this would be if you did not put any more money into it. So if you just put the money in there and forgot about it for 8 years. Now, that assumes that that interest rate continues over that period of 8 years. Realistically, right now, there's nothing's going to, well, I guess if it's a money market account, you possibly could earn that much interest, but in just a typical savings account right now, interest rates are much, much lower than that. But anyway, so that's how you would do that problem. So pause this, go ahead and try it and see which answer you come up with. Okay, so here's what you should have filled in, and when you work that out, you should have gotten C. And it's too bad that on these practice problems, I don't write these ones that this comes from the textbook publisher. I wish they had changed this up so you would have seen a different example besides quarterly. But you saw that value, I gave you those values of N for the different words that you might see that would tell you what to use here. So you might need those for the homework problems. So now we're switching gears, and this is talking about exponential inequalities. We talked about exponential equations, and actually what we just did here was an application of an exponential equation. It had an equal sign. Now we're going to look at inequalities. And basically, it's the same thing. It's just the symbol in the middle is going to be an inequality. And this is just saying if 2 to the x power is greater than 2 to the 6 power, then that means x is greater than 6. Okay? And it goes the other way too. If x is greater than 6, then that means 2 to the x power has to be greater than 2 to the 6 power. So it goes both ways. That's what if and only if means, that it goes both ways. So let's make use of that. So I have this problem. I still have to start out the same way with equations. I have to find a common base. So just kind of look at it and think, what do I think the common base is? Well, I have a 5 here. So then I think, 5. I think 5 is my common base. So can I raise 5 to a power and get 625? You have a calculator, so try it. 5 to the 4th power is 625. So 625 equals 5 to the 4th power. So I'm going to leave this alone because that already is my common base. Now, it's flipped over though. So that means since it's 1 over 625, this has to be 1 over 5 to the 4th. Okay, let's switch that around. So 1 over 625, that's true, but we want to say this, 5 to the negative 4th. So I'm going to write this as 5 to the negative 4th. Okay, this is true. 1 over 625 is 1 over 5 to the 4th, but I don't want to change that. I need it to have a 5. So I just need to remember reciprocal means negative exponent. Well, because this is greater than, that means that 3 minus 2x has to be greater than negative 4. And now I am just solving this inequality. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. I get negative 2x is greater than negative 7. And then next, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. But then you have to remember something. When you divide by a negative, remember that you flip the inequality. That's true if you multiply or divide by a negative. The inequality flips, so this becomes x is greater than a positive 7/2, and that would be my answer. Okay, so a couple things to remember. This is not new. When you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality symbol. Okay, so go ahead and pause this and try this one. All right, so if you were thinking of a common base, now being that 3 is a prime number, this has got to be your thought process that, okay, it's got to be a 3. If there is a common base, it must be a 3. So then you try things. So maybe you go 3 to the 5th power. What do you know? I got it on my first try. So 243 is 3 to the 5th power, which means 1 over 243 is 3 to the negative 5th power. So we have this. So we get 4 minus 3x is greater than negative 5. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. That's supposed to be a 4. And divide by negative 3. Remember, flip the inequality, so we get x is less than 3. So your answer should be C. Okay, so again, this is exactly the same thing as it was with equations. Find your common base. You got to use the rules for exponents. The only thing I guess that you'd have to remember here is when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the inequality. So you have to remember that. So really that's all the new material. The notes were kind of short. So what I want you to do, I'm not going to give you book work for the assignment, but this is your assignment to add on to your notes. There are 5 problems. I will be grading these. So you need to show your work, and please make it neat so I can see your work with the problem, so I can kind of follow what you're doing. So this is what your assignment is, as well as the notes. So you're just going to add this onto your notes, and but this, make sure this part is neat.